Thank you very much, and it's great to be part of this group discussion, even though I'm sitting alone and we're all sitting alone in our different places around the world. I've been asked to make a few comments on democracies in Asia, and in particular some of the threats that seem to be winding back the progress we've made on democracy in the region. I've been living in Asia for almost 30 years and working in situations of mass violence and mass conflict, usually transitioning out of those contexts. One of the things that strikes me working now in these situations of conflict and post-conflict contexts is that ethnicity and religion is once more being manipulated and used to divide people and as a basis for persecution, which leads to conflict. This is a major threat to the democratization of the region, and that factor is very interesting because if we look at the sites where this discrimination is exploding into violence and where there's been recurrent violence, we find that those sites are in areas where the colonial map drawing exercises, or where nation states came to be divided around those borders, found that certain groups were in a minority. This was really purely historical accident. And when we look across, for example, Southeast Asia, we find the conflict areas in Indonesia to be right at the edge of the country. In the east in Papua, in the west 4.5 hours flight away in Aceh. You move north to see where the conflict areas are, and we find in the Philippines the discrimination, the deep-seated discrimination and ethno-religious divisions are found in the most intense form right at the edge of the country in Mindanao. Muslim minorities, ethno-Muslim, ethno-religious minority in the largely Catholic population of the Philippines. When we move over to Thailand and look at where the conflict is in Thailand, once again we see ethnicity and religion playing an increasing part, and the conflict in the south of Thailand involves the Patani ethnic Muslim minority and their claims of being persecuted by the majority Buddhist Thai military forces in particular, with the death toll in that area now exceeding an estimated 7,000. Moving up to Myanmar, once again we see an ethno-religious conflict and a threat to the base of democracy, which is equality for all, being seen in gross terms in the west of the country in Rakhine State, where the attacks over the last 2 years, and particularly during one 4-week period where 10,000 Rohingya Muslims were murdered, hundreds if not more women raped, babies killed, and they're the facts according to the United Nations fact-finding mission, leading to 800,000 of those Rohingya fleeing to the refugee camps now in Bangladesh. Again, that conflict relates to an ethno-religious minority along the borders of the state boundaries created by the colonial powers. If we look at Myanmar, there are more than 15 different ethnic conflicts and ethnic armies, each one fighting for their own acceptable levels of freedom, and each one fighting against the Burmese military. All of those related to ethnic differences and in some cases religious differences as well. So we see across the region, when we move to India, we see now a major troubling aspect of Hindu nationalism increasing, with a threat to expel large numbers of Muslims who live around the border areas. These indicators, of course, when we look at other countries in Asia, China, attacks on the Uyghur, the Muslim ethnic religious group. We look at other countries in the region, we see similar conflict and threats to the democratic base based on the differences of the ethnicity and religion. So this is a major worrying factor. Even when those issues are less obvious, when they are not causing direct conflict, such as in Indonesia, if we look a little bit deeper, we see that the politicians are very disappointingly playing the religious card in political battles, threatening and accusing people of other religions, accusing each other of not being religious enough for particular religions. Once again, playing with a very dangerous mix of discrimination that we know from experience across the region and in Indonesia can ignite into mass violence.